Sup, cutie pies. I haven't been a fan of college football for very long. I think I've been a fan since 2023 as my first year. But over the past 18 months or so, I've been getting a bit more engaged with how the sport works and the fandom and everything. One of the first things I did when I started watching college football was making preseason standing predictions, which I started in 2023. I made one for that year and also for 2024. We don't talk about those. And finally, I did one for last year. This one felt different to me because I felt a lot more knowledgeable about the teams, and I actually took time and research to do all of it, and I ended up with this. I do have proof that I actually did this before the season began, but I couldn't find a tier list where I made this in, so this is a recreation. When I made this initially, I thought I was gonna knock it out of the park, but I know there were a couple strange ones, but I was like, man, this looks so good. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. So here is the entire thing, and oh my goodness, this looks absolutely awful. Let's just address the elephant in the room since it's literally in the thumbnail. I'm gonna explain myself here. Penn State at 12-0. I'm gonna be honest, I fell for the hype. My justification for this was after Penn State collapsed in the semifinals last year, I thought James Franklin finally has playoff experience now. Maybe he can lead Drew Aller and the team back to the playoffs and maybe go on the championship run. Wrong, that did not happen. They lost to UCLA and it was over from there on out. Just made me look stupid. This one generally might be worse though because Baylor didn't even do that much last season to even guarantee a ranking like this. I know they got Prentice from the portal, but that does not justify the 11-1 record, even with the Big 12 schedule they were given. Alright, enough about those. Now let's see where I put the other 134 teams on this and see if it aged very poorly. My first big prediction was that no team was going to finish below 2-10, which did not happen. But for the teams I did put 2-10, I did Akron, Central Michigan, Middle Tennessee, and Stanford. Not off to a great start. Although I was only off by 1 for Middle Tennessee and 2 for Stanford. I wonder what 4 opponents Stanford won against. What even was this season? Central Michigan wasn't great prior to this season, but they definitely performed above expectations that year. Now we're on to 3-9 and it's somehow even worse. The Purdue pick is okay, it was predictable though, and both Charlotte and Oklahoma State just straight up disappointed. Who loses to Tulsa if you're a Big 12 team this decade? Anyways, can you guess the glaring problem with this one? That's right, this team won the MAC champion, at 3-9. Western Michigan hasn't even gotten under 4 wins in over a decade. And of course, there are the other glaring offenders like Cincinnati, East Carolina, and Louisiana Tech. At least Florida State and Kentucky performed above my expectations. They got 5 wins. With my best pick there being Air Force, it's time for 4-8. Now here is when things started to get a bit better for me. I even got a couple of them right on the money. I almost gave myself one on the Kent State prediction because these boys finished 0-12. They were predicted last in the conference. And yet they almost made the postseason. Mark Carney is a literal savior on that team. That being said, there are still some inexcusable ones on here, like Houston and Kennesaw State. Now granted, both of these teams were not good, especially Kennesaw State, but they were 2-10. They just trashed their one and only head coach for them, and yet they somehow won. I'm not going to blame myself on that one. Now, Houston is a little bit less reasonable. They were 4-8 in 2024, but I got caught out by Big 12 parity. Let's just say that. There are some other notable ones here too, like Cal finished with a winning record. Fresno State performed very well. Missouri State had a winning record. Man, for a guy that really likes the first timers, I was not high on them this time around. And New Mexico, okay, nobody's soul had New Mexico doing that well. They were on the rise, sure, but they lost their head coach, their starting quarterback, and were always at the bottom half of the Mountain West. Congrats to them, they made the postseason for the first time in nearly a decade. And finally, we have UMass. I don't want to relive that, we could just move on. Now, spoiler alert, out of all the tiers so far, this is probably the most accurate one. I want to say West Virginia was the best pick here, but I'm going to go with Kent State since they went 0-12 the previous season. And I can't say how many people expected them to perform at this level after what happened, so not bad. That will be the last time I score a bullseye here, as 5-7 I got 0 picks correct. I guess you could say 4-8 is my sweet spot, but at least for this one, there are a couple of teams where I was only off by about a game. Louisiana, North Carolina, South Alabama, UTSA, and Wisconsin. I need to stop playing my favorite Wisconsin. I'm sorry, Badgers. Luke Fickell is going to be a case study one day. I can just feel it. There are, of course, some very egregious choices too, like North Texas at 5-7. Okay, to be honest, no one expected North Texas to do that. That was like a generational run right there. Like, that makes sense. But 5-7, you can only give hindsight so much benefit of the doubt. I'm never going to doubt Eric Morris ever again. Now Arkansas. How do you not win a single SEC game? And they just got the hardest schedule of the season this time around. So I don't know what my Razorback fans are thinking of this. Like, this is just crazy. Louisville, top 15 team at their peak. Missouri, top 15 team at their peak. Let's just forget about this. Now on to the bowl teams, the 6-6. And we have Indiana at 6-6. I don't know what I was thinking. This team went to a playoff last season. Practically nothing changed from that 2024 roster, and I still put them here. Like, there's just no excuse for this. There's multiple playoff teams that are in this section. Oklahoma, to be fair, Oklahoma had a rough first season in the SEC. Okay, I think we all knew that. But Ole Miss, there's just nothing here. I'm happy about the Nebraska pick bowl. Like, they went to a bowl for the first time in a while last season, and they ended up doing it in 2025. You know, I'm glad I believed in them. Navy finished top 25 with 10 wins in the regular season. Like, come on. Oregon State went 2-10. I don't know what happened to this team. Wake Forest should not be here. We're at the top half of the ACC. Tennessee, really shaky season for them, but they should not have been down here. Indiana, the national champion at 6-6. It should just invalidate everything here, but we're going to keep going. At 7-5, the only correct pick here on the money is Duke. I did see a little bit of regression. That's kind of what I thought of. Obviously, I did not expect them to go to the conference championship game, but I think we need a bit of a palate cleanser. There are some okay picks in here near it, like Arizona State, Iowa State, Pittsburgh. Syracuse probably would have made it here if their quarterback didn't get hurt in the season. They had a good start to that. Colorado, they were just really disappointing, man. Went from a top 25 team to 3-9. I understand they lost two of their biggest pieces in the offseason, but they still brought some decent talent in. There's just no excuse. UCLA, if they continued that momentum, which they did after a while, after that Penn State win, I think they probably would have made it here. But again, they did lose to the UNLV. There's not really much you can do there. I think that says a lot about that Penn State team last year. Moving on, the G5 picks. They were egregious. These picks are just absolutely egregious. And of course, we have the one and only Texas Tech. To be fair to me, and please give me mercy on this is where Texas Tech usually ends up during this decade. That's exactly what I was thinking when I was making this entire list, and I decided to put them here. I always try to put a couple surprise upsets or some surprising losses to try to kind of even out the entropy of college football now. So sometimes you get some really good results in here, and other times it's like, okay, you just have not watched any of the games ever. I probably should have known better at considering their investments. Easily the worst pick of the group, on to 8-4. Now this is where you have to start understanding the vision with me. This is where all the pieces start connecting together. We're now through the bulk majority of the team, and this is where all the picks start making a little bit more sense. Appalachia State went 5-7, had 4 close losses, had their first year head coach as well. Just an unfortunate season for them. Boston College? We're not even going to justify that one. Georgia Tech probably had them losing against Clemson, that's why they're here. Illinois, right on the money. Iowa, right on the money. We're 2 in a row. James Madison, okay, they ended up around the same place before 2025. I thought that was going to continue. It did not, and I'm glad that it went the way that it did. Miami, Ohio, pretty good. I did not have them as the best MAC team though, so not great. Nevada, outside of groupies, I had them as one of my most surprising teams last year. That did not pan out. Alright, let's just stop ourselves right here, right now. Texas A&M, they officially broke the 8-win curse. They are now a can't beat the Texas Longhorns curse team. Troy, right on it. And I definitely picked them along with James Madison to go to the Sun Belt Championship, so that is something. Okay, this is getting completely ridiculous. I definitely didn't know Dan Mullen's game like that. USC, Could not believe they still beat Michigan, but they're here. I think this is about where people expected them to be at, so it's alright. Utah, I don't know if I can confidently say this is a bad pick because they did not have a winning season in 2024 and it was an okayish schedule for them. I did believe that they were going to be in the upper half of the Big 12 last year, but then again, I did put 11-1 Baylor above them, so yeah. Finally, we can end this off with a perfect 8-4 Western Kentucky. Kind of predictable, which is why I will say that the Troy pick is my best one of the 8-4 group. Now on to the 9-3 group, and this is where I start really categorizing these teams into the top 25 sort of echelon. I think out of all the tiers in this list, I think the 9-3 is my most solid predictions. That's not really saying anything considering that Colorado State is here, but they're still the best of this nonetheless. Boise State, I underestimated Fresno State, which is why they're here, but I still had them winning the Mountain West Championship, so all good. Really thought Buffalo would have done more this season after 9-4, but Pete Lambeau couldn't get it done. Again, underestimated BYU after a very solid season by their standards. They are definitely building something over there. Jacksonville State, I did put them in a decent spot, but I did not have them going to the Conference USA Championship, so some points off for that. LSU, now LSU just completely underperformed this season. They were the number 3 team in the country before they hit the bulk of their SEC schedule and just kind of never recovered. Brian Kelly is gone. Just a completely disastrous season for the Tigers. Michigan, right on it. It's probably the 3 most predictable losses ever, minus that USC loss, which means I actually would have had Iowa beating USC at the time, which is that's not good. Ohio Bobcats, fine. They didn't make the MAC championship though. Toledo, man, that upper half of the MAC last year was pretty good. Finally, Tulane, they went 10-2. I put them at 9-3. All good. I probably would have had them making the American Championship, but that means one of their losses would have come against Memphis, which I don't really know what's going on there. Again, a pretty solid section, but Michigan was the only team I was 100% correct on. Still pretty good, but it definitely could have been better. Now, I actually have a lot more teams on 10-2 than 9-3, and I think that's one of my problems with how I do predictions. I tend to overestimate a lot of these wins for the top teams. Here's actually a sample for the 2026 predictions I'm doing right now, and it's obviously going to be completely different when I actually release it, but yeah, it's kind of an issue. Which is why it leads to stuff like Penn State 12 and you know what, whatever. Alabama, right on it. Arizona, close. Clemson, oh my god. Clemson, top 5 preseason team, defending ACC champion. 7-5. That was the best that they could do. They almost lost to Troy. They barely beat Louisville, which is the only reason they even made a bowl. Just whatever. And Florida was even worse. Last season really exposed a lot of coaches, didn't it? Georgia is good. I definitely had them losing to Texas, which is why they were in 10-2 instead of 11-1, but okay. Liberty, Liberty, oh no, oh, it's only getting worse. Maryland, they went 4-8. Here we have Memphis. This is the team that I chose last season during groupies that they would be the winner. They would be the one to have gotten the playoff bid. I said that out of all the 68 G5 teams that they were going to be the one that made the least mistakes. They then lost to UAB on Mortison's first ever head coach game. Also, if you go back to that video, you would see these group of teams I would have as the top groupies teams, and I did not include James Madison in here. This is just negative ball knowledge. James Madison, a team that had not lost more than 4 games every season since they moved up to FBS, was not on here. This is just utterly ridiculous. Miami, Florida, made it. Definitely would have made the ACC championship in my book, but they did not, but still predicted. Notre Dame, make it 2 in a row. Sam Houston, they won 10 games last year, and then they bring in Phil Longo, who was the Wisconsin offensive coordinator, and what did they immediately do? They immediately tank. Like, these aren't even good wins, but it's like just so surprising that they had this big of a turnaround. Or as I could say, a reverse turnaround. A downturn. SMU, I don't want to fault myself too much on this one. They had some bad losses against California and Wake Forest, but this is where they would have ended up if that didn't happen. Probably a little too high still for my taste, but they were solid the last 2 seasons before that, so it's still acceptable. Texas, it's all good, nothing to really say here, they adjusted well to the SEC. And then we got Virginia. Nobody saw this coming, let's just say that right now. When I initially posted this tier list privately, some people looked at the Virginia placement, I know who you are, they immediately laughed at me and dismissed all of my other placements afterwards, which to be fair, that was the right call. However, that just happened to be the one I was right on it for. Eyes must have saw an insane vision that led me to this result. Tony Elliott might be a future Hall of Famer, I don't know. ACC was crazy this year, winning this season at all time for Virginia. That is just incredible, and that is why I am picking that as the obvious best pick for the 10-2 group. Since I already talked about Penn State and Baylor, and I don't want to get into that again, let's just end it off on a good note. First of all, South Carolina. I did not see anything here. I guess my logic was that, South Carolina always has potential to be a dark horse in the college football world, and I thought Lenora Sellers was something good. Even though everyone else said that he was not good, it was definitely a huge stretch, even if they won 9 regular season games in 2024. Just a huge miss there. How did 80,000 people watch this team go 4-8? I don't know. Second to last team was Ohio State, did about what they could. I definitely had them losing to Texas to start the season, but other than that, all good. Finally, I have Oregon, 11-1. I definitely did not pick them to lose against Indiana, but they sit here as my final perfect match. With that, that is all 136 teams of the 2025 season predicted and ranked. If you're curious on how well I actually did on doing that thing, which spoiler alert, I did not, out of these 136 teams, I picked 16 correctly. 16 of 136. An additional 41 teams I was only off by 1 game. Maybe there was a win that I thought was expected but didn't work out, or there was a surprise victory against a higher ranked team. That's likely what caused this. I definitely would have liked to see them been actually perfect, but it's still definitely pretty good to see a bunch of them there. Then you have the 79 other teams where I was just completely off the mark with them. Out of all of these predictions, there is no doubt that my best pick was the 10-2 Virginia Cavaliers. Nobody, and I mean nobody, could have seen that coming. That was the first time that they got 10 wins ever since 1989. And they were nowhere near as good as this in the previous couple of seasons, so this was completely out of left field. I guess you could say that lightning strikes once, the ACC is a mess, and that's why I love it so much. Now the worst pick, there are a lot of choices for this. I think it's going to be a tie between 11-1 Baylor and 6-6 Indiana. There is absolutely zero justification for either of these picks. There are probably those that have never watched a college football game in their life that would have saw these predictions and said, yeah, these two are absolutely ridiculous. Please change them. With that, those were my predictions for the 2025 season. I'm definitely going to do this again. I think you're going to see that video shortly. I promise. I hope it's a lot better than this. I now have a whole nother year of footage under my belt. I'm going to redeem myself this time. Thank you all for watching, everybody, and I will see you later. Yeah, later.